When humans finally reached beyond their cradle and they reached the galactic community as a whole, we looked at them and they seemed easy to deal with. Simple creatures, for sure. Low technology, barely able to reach their own FTL. In fact, they're so simple they did not even use the space lanes, but instead preferred to jump instead. This was strange, but whatever. If they wanted to waste their time, waste their power, waste all their equipment, as jumping seems to use a lot more technology than we thought, well, perhaps they would learn that the space lanes were better. They also looked remarkably stupid. I mean, we didn't understand this. We all laughed multiple times looking at these mammalians with no fur. And even if they did, they simply removed it. Some of them kept a little bit of fur, some for decorative purposes, some they said for practical, but we didn't understand. If it was practical, then why only keep so little of it? Why remove so much from so many areas? This was strange. You would think this would be used as a defense measure, as any other mammalian does, but no. They removed all their defenses. They were completely defenseless. Not only that, but they have no inherent offensive weapons at all. No pincers, no poisons, no claws, no tails, no wings. What is wrong with these things anyway? We only saw one small advantage. They did have a high amount of digits. If you look at all the rest of the species around, there is the standard tentacle, which means one digit at the end, although it was a full appendage. Or they had 3, and this was like us with our claws. Or they had 4, the extra finger seeming a bit disgusting at first, but now we looked on these humans and they had 5 digits. Why? This does not make any sense, evolutionarily speaking. They did not require this many. Why so many? It does not seem to help them with any offensive or defensive or anything of that. We believe them to be completely defenseless and offenseless. The only obvious trait that they had that drew any of our attention was their extreme strength or dexterity. Their dexterity was 9% higher than the tall white species' dexterity was, and they were the ones with the highest dexterity of all creatures, sentient and otherwise. Then we looked at their strength, and to our shock and horror, they had 14% higher strength than the lizard people, like us. This was a concern, however, they did not seem aggressive. Plus, we knew that we could simply tear them apart with our claws, our fangs, and our poison would cause them to die, if not send them into a coma for we had no idea how long. I looked forward to testing this. I did not get the chance. Our species at first tried to trick them with contracts. This was a commonplace tactics against new species. We had many that owed us, and they would never stop owing us, no matter what they did. It was very nice to know that they would be under our heels and at our beck and call whenever we chose. However, we did not abuse this too much. Every once in a while, if we wanted to have a, shall we say, a get-together and wanted some entertainment, it was pretty interesting to simply use this contract. However, when we tried to use this against the humans, we met probably the most vile scum and villainy of all the humans. They call them lawyers. These humans are the most evil of all. Every single time we would have a contract, we would have a clause that would hold them to us, to bind them to us, to be our servants, and yet before any of the production could even begin, the lawyers would stop everything, stop the humans from agreeing and say, you must remove this. It must go away. It must be a fair contract. Ugh, even saying that makes the venom in my mouth taste disgusting. Ugh, it is usually so sweet. But ugh, a fair deal. Ugh, do we have to? It was just painful. Ugh, ugh, I just felt a shiver go from my snout to my tail. Ugh. After this failed, we believed we would try getting them addicted to gambling. This again has worked wonderfully. Wager on things and then simply fix the outcome. Yet the humans seem to be excellent at games of chance. Yet they called it chance. We knew it was fixed in our favor, but it seemed as though the humans figured out what we were doing. They would simply expose our tricks. Anything from laser inversion on the race to simply giving them the wrong type of rolling material so that they would come up with the numbers we wanted. What really, really got our horns in a twist was when we found out the humans were exceptionally good at playing what they call cards. We got addicted to this gambling, and now it is a taboo on our planet. Yet they are extremely good at not only playing the game, but being able to figure out when somebody is playing the game against them, and it's not a fair game. Ugh. Even when we came up with our own games, they immediately figured out how to play, and it did not take long before they became experts. So good, in fact, that they would simply make us go broke. Many times we would have to grab one of our own and drag them away from the table before they placed any more bets and put us in any debt that we did not want. Of course, we did not want any, but the humans gambling against them was just a losing proposition. Realizing that they could simply win everything from us if it was fair, we decided that we would take back the winnings by whatever means necessary, and of course this usually meant violence. But we found out something else. Humans understand that if they have a lot of credits, a lot of materials that someone would desire, they would have human security. And human security proved exceptionally dangerous. Diving at one of these who have the winnings, you would simply find yourself grabbed a hold of by one of the humans. They would reach in many times, grabbing you by the throat, raising you very high, and squeezing until they heard something crack or pop. Waving your claws and drawing blood would simply bring their ire, and they would bring all sorts of pain to you, many times ripping off a limb just to prove a point. Many of our own fell because of this. Many were left on the ground. We can recover from a lost limb, as it will regenerate over the course of an entire planetary cycle, but the pain is not something you forget, especially since these humans, they know that we can regenerate, so they make it a point to remove all 4 limbs. They don't care much for our tails. In fact, if they grab the tail, this security will simply spin us around and smash our bodies into something solid. It is unpleasant, to say the least. We decided that if direct violence was not enough, then threats against family or associates would work. When we stopped one of these wealthy humans, the security would get between them, but no, the humans would be always, as they put it, polite. They would be nice, and they would listen. But as we threatened their family and associates, the humans would simply look, and the expression would change a little bit. Something about the eyes changed from prey to predator, something that would once again send a chill down my spikes. The humans would threaten back. They would simply say that an eye for an eye. We did not understand this until one human family was attacked. One of our associate groups went in and decided to raid the house that the human was in, but the whole family was there. The whole human family, male, female, and their hatchlings, and they were all destroyed. Lost in the chaos. Many of our former associates enjoyed thrashing them to pieces. However, finding out that the human family had been not only taken all of their possessions, but their lives had been taken in the most brutal ways, the human rage showed its face for the first time to us. The humans found out what group this was. They did not just aim for the group, no. The humans went in and ended multiple bloodlines that night. The humans came in under the cover of darkness, using some sort of technology so they could see the way we see, or better. We sensed no heat from them. At least, that's what the last recording was. They couldn't find out where the humans were until the humans were on top, ripping them to pieces, but this time they didn't stop with ripping the limbs off. No, they eviscerated entire families of that consortium. There was nothing left but absolute destruction. The gore that was there made many of the law enforcement unable to maintain themselves and have to relieve multitudes of internal digestive juices all over the ground. Entrails scattered across the ground, bodies pushed up onto the wall, hung up in display. Many times the blood was actually written out in a crude human language. Sometimes the words were dripping still, unable to be read even by humans. In some cases, the words revenge, payback, rage, and one that we couldn't quite understand until one of the human investigators figured out what it was. It wasn't even in the humans' primary language. It was a word they call hubris. We did not understand this word. Even when it was explained, we still have trouble understanding it. After this, no one dared assault the human family ever. They knew that the humans were pack hunters, and they came in large groups. You might be able to pick one off. However, they would all come together for you. So, this was a bad business deal. After this, the human security seemed to focus more on our smuggling. Oh, why did they have to go? The humans, unlike others, seemed to know exactly when our people were not being truthful. Even today, we don't know how they figure it out, but they can always tell. And they would constantly question us over and over in different ways until they caught us mixing our words. I don't know how they learned such things, but eventually we would lower our heads, and the moment that happened in every single video shown, they knew they had us. What was even worse is when they brought in their pets. These four-limbed canines were absolute horrors for our smuggling. They somehow had olfactory sensors so strong that no one could figure out how to get past them. Not only that, but if you ever tried to run from one, or, great maker help you, if you ever attacked the one who controlled this canine, it would come at you with fury, grab a hold of one of your limbs, start thrashing sideways violently back and forth until the limb came off, and then it would proudly walk over to the handler as though the arm, leg, tail, or even head was a prize. It was scary. To counter this, we decided that we would have to drop our prehensile tails. This would actually get the canine unit to focus on the thrashing prehensile. However, we would have to stay perfectly still so that this four-legged, fierce freak would leave us be. But as soon as we held still, the handler would catch us. It was terrible. We can't get through. What made it even worse is that every single security unit that ever existed would immediately start calling out for humans to be on their security team, and they paid them quite well because they were so efficient. Not only that, but if they had these four-legged furry freaks with them, they were paid even more. This took the Black Book businesses down so much they were going to go broke. We could not let this happen. We couldn't. This had been our way forever. We had never known any other way, so we decided to switch over to something we knew was still profitable, and we focused primarily on that. But piracy did not work either. The human jump tech made it very difficult to catch them, as they would simply jump from system to system, and when they did, they would jump in areas that were very well monitored. And the jump engines, as they called them, were a very closely guarded secret, and we couldn't figure out how to stop them, how to make them come out of their jump where we wanted them to. If we could do this, it would have been easy. At least we thought it would be. One of the human ships was finally boarded after so many planetary rotations of us trying. And when we finally got aboard, they had taken everything but the bridge and the engine room, and the ship itself exploded. The resulting blast tore into the multiple ships of ours that were docked on all sides. It was absolutely horrific to see all these ships tore apart, and then the shrapnel from these ships flying through space, hitting more of our ships, tearing them apart, many of our brethren being ventilated into space. It was just, we didn't want to take one of the human ships after that. Eventually, we went back to the space lanes. We figured that would be more profitable, and it was. The space lanes turned out to be our saving grace. They were so profitable that many of the space lanes were absolutely jam-packed with convoys that would hope to scatter as we showed up, trying desperately to get away, but they knew as soon as we had locked, they had two choices: surrender or die. Then we saw that humans had begun to use the space lanes too. This was a surprise, but a welcome surprise, as the space lanes were much easier to pirate than anything else. We ambushed the large convoys, and we believed we had them all, as they were completely surrounded. Even the human vessels, even if we left it alone, eventually we could just simply blast its engines, it wouldn't explode, and we could strip it for parts. But the human vessels turned out to be always armed. Not always armed, but excessively armed. We found out that they call these convoy ships, these transport ships, Q ships. And every human ship at that point, every possible vessel was avoided because you didn't know where the weapons were. Some would simply sprout seemingly from nowhere across the hull. Others, some blisters would open up and then they would raise and then begin to fire. Some of them were built into the front or rear of the ship, and the ship would simply turn towards you and then fire a massive chunk of metal clean through your ship before you even had a chance to realize what was going on. Even worse is when they had a swarm of these strange devices, chemically propelled, that would pepper the sides of the ship, tearing it to pieces on the outside, ventilating almost all the atmosphere before any of the doors could be shut. This would lead the crew to slowly suffocate inside, and then the ship would be taken. Our forces did their best. However, eventually it became doctrine to stay away from human ships at all possible. Simply let them escape, but the human ships sometimes would sit there and guard everyone in the convoy. Oh, these humans. Because the humans had shown that they had been not only strong, but extremely fast and unbelievably able to adapt, and along with their near invulnerability in combat, many of the humans became prized. They became prized as slaves. It didn't matter what species, any royal family, any wealthy family wanted a human as a slave to show their dominance. Yet no one would dare to try and take a human until the price was unbelievably high. This is when some of our brethren decide to slave traffic humans. The Glock piracy group tried this. They were the only ones to try, and they do not exist anymore. They believed themselves safe as they purged a colony, simply taking all the slaves as fast as possible. They believed they had blocked all communications, of course. Yet something must have gone out. And yet somehow, after they got away without seeing another human ship at all, the human fleet of another planet arrived. Without hesitation, they began to destroy all non-slaves. It was easy for them to tell, of course, as slaves had their collars on them, their control shock collars. Anyone not wearing a collar was immediately taken down, ripped apart if need be, and sent onto the wall on some sort of spike to show the entire universe who they were. The Glock group was torn asunder by any humans that got in. The humans seemed to show their rage again as they came in and started to rip everyone apart. Those that surrendered did not get away at all. The humans seemed to not like this happening at all. This fleet, we figured it was only the one fleet. Somehow they were protecting that one planet. They had to. Maybe they knew these slaves. They were their own bloodline or something. But this is the only reason that not only would many of our own in the Glock group be completely annihilated, but the rest were hung up, castrated, delimbed, and then executed as everything was sent out live on the HoloNets. Many tuned in to watch this happen, as they wanted to know what the humans were willing to do to protect their own. Many turned it off as they could not understand the violence, the gore that was happening, as part of the torso was opened up and the intestines spilling on the ground. Those who were being tortured, screeching in pain, begging to be killed, yet they died very slowly as they bled out, many of them not realizing that their own intestines had hit the floor. It was horrific. Seeing this, a revenge plot began. I was not part of this, but 96% of all pirate forces combined to attack a human colony world. They would not take slaves. They would just leave bodies. Well, after they had the fun with humans, as it turns out that the humans, once you remove their outer garments, many of their parts line up. This would make things more interesting, and they would be able to show this to the humans. Let them know that you cannot hide from us. We will be dominant over you. With the amount of ships that was brought along, it should be easy to handle that one planetary fleet should it show up. And of course they could. But they saw one fleet enter in that strange jump drive that the humans use. Everyone turned to face them, outnumbering the humans easily, 17-1. But then another group jumped in, and another, and another, and another, and another. No one understood where they were coming from, but the humans jumped in all around the system, cutting off the pirate retreat. Before they even realized what was going on, ordnance was flying in from all different directions, punching holes in their vessels. The humans came in, would fire at point-blank range with those strange ballistic weapons. The energy weapons seemed to bounce off their hulls. It seems as though they had figured out how to deal with the energy weapons that every other species uses. And the human weapons would blow holes through the ships, sometimes eviscerating them from stem to stern. One shot and one kill. The humans showed their incredible efficiency in destruction, yet they had nothing shown yet. No, they did not. Those that died in space were actually the lucky ones, as many of them were ended quickly, but no, the humans were not done. The humans sent down something strange onto the planet. Everyone believed that these were large pieces of ordnance, but no. What we can tell, what little came out, these were humans dropping through the atmosphere at complete velocity. And they would strike at almost terminal velocity. How they survived, you didn't know, but somehow the humans would rush out of these pods, I believe they call them, and they would simply start tearing everything apart. Anything that was not human was simply annihilated, torn apart. The humans even wore armor that seemed to enhance their strength, block our energy weapons. It seemed as though these demons that they are would not stop killing us. We saw what was left. Not a single one of them made it out. I was glad that my group did not have the ability to join them, or else my existence would have been done. Now, the black books are almost non-existent. Our own prowess has been shot completely. It's gone. We are looked at as almost a laughingstock now, as our own economy is trying desperately to figure out a way to survive without our tactics. Yet every time we use our original tactics, we begin to try and rise to power and prominence, and every time we fail. And every time we do, we know why. And that is why each time we fail, we say the same thing. Damn humans! Hello, everybody. This is Syntax. Thank you so much for joining me on today's story. Before I go, I need to send out a big thank you to one of my supporters, and that would be the SS Demon. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I will see you on the next one. This is Syntax, ejecting.